What is going on, guys? Welcome back to This Is Not a Podcast. I'm your host, Connor, joined by my co-host, Tim. Tim, you want to say hi?
What's up, guys? It's Tim. Sorry I haven't been, sorry we haven't been uploading. I got diagnosed with mono. Pretty sick for like a couple weeks. Sounded like Kermit the Frog, but it's chill. We're back, ready to go. Ready to dish you some great stuff.
Yeah, I didn't know if we were going to be getting Tim back there for a little bit, folks. It looked like he was right on death's door.
About to have to replace me, after only a couple episodes.
Yeah, we were hosting auditions and nothing worked out. So
we just have to do a tribute episode, remembering Tim.
Remembering Tim. All right, well, the topic we got this week is kind of the perfect one to come back to because not only is it interesting, dark, but it's also just outright crazy. And that one is the lost cosmonaut theory. Essentially, what it boils down to is that the Soviet Union during the space race lost a number of cosmonauts, same thing as astronauts for those that don't understand Russian, in space in various different ways. But our story begins with the Giudica Cordiglia brothers. It's Italian, so I could absolutely be pronouncing that wrong. But essentially, they were just two Italian brothers that were amateur radio operators who made audio recordings of these alleged lost cosmonauts. And pretty much the pair, very intelligent and had a deep interest in radio astronomy. And so in their own backyard, they set up progressively more complex systems that would be able to capture more and more radio recordings from space. Originally, they made it so they could record Sputnik, which was the first ever satellite that got lost into space by the Soviets. And then as they kind of got better and better, they would start hearing more and more, and they'd also be able to capture U.S. missions as well. But the biggest one is the recording that we're about to listen to. And I'll broadcast it really quick, but this will give some context to the story that we're going to tell. And this one was recorded in 1961 by the brothers. So let's go ahead and listen to it really quick, and then we can go over some reactions. So I think we get the gist. Not many speak Russian, so.
So basically, for those who are just listening and not watching, the YouTube video showed a translation from Russian to English of, what she was saying. It seems like it's kind of hard to tell with the recording whether, she was getting responses back from whoever she was trying to transmit to. But she was basically saying, talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. Like what's going on? She kept saying, I am hot, like I am getting hot, which we would assume to be that she was re-entering the atmosphere and, was burning up. She kept saying, help, help, help. I think she asked for oxygen. Maybe she's running out of oxygen. Then she said something about how she's like, I see a flame. I am hot. I am hot. She kept saying numbers like 41. I'm guessing that has to do with something with one of the instruments. But she kept saying different numbers. Then she said, I think I'm re-entering, help, hot, hot, hot. So basically just cries of distress from a woman who's clearly trapped and a spacecraft that was burning up upon re-entering. And things were definitely not going according to plan, or at least according to what she was told the plan was. Pretty haunting stuff.
Yeah, that's a good translation from Russian, Tim. I like it.
Yeah, I just took one class online.
Yeah, just were able to understand the code.
Yeah, yeah.
But
no, I just watched a season of Stranger Things and I figured it out.
But to give a little bit of background, so after the successful orbital flight of Yuri Gagarin, the Soviet authorities wanted to give a further demonstration of their superiority. Alan Shepard had finally entered space on May 5th, 1961, but only for a brief suborbital flight. That's via the U.S., one of the first ones we had. Then the USSR would send into orbit the first woman cosmonaut before the Americans would even attempt their first orbital flight. So they really wanted to get ahead of the ball. Like I said, space race was essentially a dick measuring contest during the Cold War of who could ever get the first achievements. And early on, it's pretty hard to argue against the U.S. losing to the Soviets. And realistically, what ended up winning it for us, quote unquote, would be the fact that we got to the moon first. If it wasn't for that, you could pretty easily make the argument that the Soviets won in pretty much every other faucet. But to continue, the Americans were planning one additional suborbital flight before attempting a flight of only 3 orbits going around the Earth. The Russian woman cosmonaut would end up doing 17. So obviously, it's a little bit of not only we can do it, but we can do it better. And then that launch took place on the 16th of May, 1961, essentially lining up with the recordings within a few days. We don't know what went wrong during the flight, obviously, as it's never really been released. But the re-entry that was supposed to be broadcasted via live USSR communications, via live USSR communications, was essentially delayed until the 23rd. And they said it was due to improper weather conditions. Now, the theory that ended up happening in terms of why the re-entry didn't go to plan was that the thermal shield, which would go to what you were talking about, saying it was getting really hot on the capsule, was damaged maybe during launch or in space, and therefore when it was coming in, essentially it fell apart. And a decision was finally made to perform the re-entry on May 23rd. What's really interesting, though, is that, like I said, this coincides right when the Judica brothers have this recording that we just listened to. And then 3 days later, on May 26, 1961, the Soviet presidency announced the return to Earth of the large unmanned satellite, which burned up upon re-entry into the atmosphere. The satellite was the size of a bus. Its launch had not been previously disclosed, and the purpose was unknown and was never given a reason. So the outrageous part about this is that, like I said, all this lines up perfectly with the dates of the recording. Obviously, the timeline's a little bit sketchy, and it could really be manipulated one way or another, but the brothers' recording is apparently done on the 22nd, while the undisclosed and unknown re-entry of a satellite that had no humans on board came in and burnt up on the 23rd. So obviously this isn't direct proof. This isn't, it's one of those things where you can't say for certain, but it's about as close to certain as I think you can get, Tim. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of lines up with what we know about history. Like it makes total sense. One of those things that you don't have much proof, but you hear about it and you're like, I mean, that kind of clicks into what we've heard about history. They were in a space race. It was kind of like a dick swinging contest. Kind of who can get there first, who's the superior nation. So of course, it maybe seems like Russia was just kind of sending people out there, like seeing what worked, seeing what didn't, by just kind of, maybe they didn't have many laws against it, kind of just being like, hey, you go out there and do this, you'll be a hero, it'll work. It doesn't work, they're like, all right, let's cover that up, let's not, broadcast that one. And kept kind of doing that until something worked. And if you think about it, I mean, that's easily the best way of obtaining information on how things work.
Yeah, is what fails.
Although it's unethical to actually do a live test with real human beings. Then you can clearly see what went wrong, fix it for the next time.
Yeah, and I think it's important.
I mean, it makes total sense.
I think it's important, too, to note that the situations we're talking about today are ones that are quote-unquote unknown, where we have some reasonable sources that suggest that there was other astronauts that were lost or killed on re-entry, whatever it might be. Yeah. However, there is direct showcasing of Russian cosmonauts dying in the line of duty. One of the biggest ones I was talking about with Tim before the podcast was Vladimir Komarov, who, and it was the image that I showed you, Tim, where he was burnt up on re-entry. But this cosmonaut, recognized, engineer, whatever, had a very good background, recognized that the Suez capsule that he was going to be re-entering in 1967 was going to be inadequate. It was going to fall apart. It wasn't going to be able to work. And so he was refusing to go up into space. And Russian authorities, Soviet Union authorities, essentially said that if you're not going to go, then we're going to force this guy's best friend at the time to go up. He was also an astronaut. It wasn't like they just picked his best friend off the street and were like, you're going up. Yeah. But he was also an astronaut, and, feeling for his friend, Vladimir decided to take the mission on his own anyway. And then as he was descending, the parachute did indeed fail. He started burning up. And his last words were, heat is rising in the capsule. And then he kept repeating, you killed me, you killed me, you killed me. Now, I'll show the image really quick. I showed it to Tim, but just for our viewers on YouTube, TikTok, whatever it might be, this is actually what the astronaut looked like when he re-entered. Very much a brutal image, and very, so right here is his body when it came in re-entry. It's basically burnt to a crisp. Now, the reason that he was able to have an open funeral or whatever, where you're able to view the body, is he was able to put that into a clause beforehand. And it was one of those things where the Russian authorities weren't even really able to disallow it. So, and the reason he said he wanted an open funeral is because he wanted everyone to see the mistakes that the Russian authorities had made, which is pretty brutal. But this was one of the ones that the Russian authorities did try very hard to cover up. However, they couldn't, for a number of different reasons. And like we said, this is a brutal, brutal way of dying. And this was in 1967. So this was over 6 years after the recording we said. They still had not perfected their re-entry program. They still were having constant different rocket failures, whatever it might be. And like I said, this is 6 years later. So one can only imagine, in 1961, how, like we said, this recording with the woman astronaut, all of it kind of co-aligns. But then simply when something falls apart, doesn't work, whatever it might be, they neglect it or make an excuse or think of some other reason that ship was up there and it burned on reentry, but there was no humans on board. So the Judica brothers actually had other proof recordings that weren't necessarily direct voices, but instead came via SOS signals from... why can I not think of the code thing right now? Morse code.
Morse. Yeah.
And it was actually found in 1959, which is the first one that came into their sites. And it was essentially just an SOS code, Morse code. And one of the things that they noted was that the code was slowly fading away, which essentially whatever transmission they were getting from space, it was moving away from Earth. And it was not, able to come back, whatever it might be. Obviously, this, once again, coincided with a satellite launch that happened in that year. In terms of when the recording timeline was, and Russian reporting lost the satellite into deep space. However, they said that there was no human on board. But as we discussed before this, Tim, I don't think they had the AI technology or anything like that to be able to be sending Morse code signals, and certainly no animal is going to be able to do that.
Yeah, it doesn't make... What would the need be for Morse code?
And then
if there's no human on board.
Exactly. And I mean, they launched a dog into space previously, which never returned. They've lost plenty of, different objects, whatever it might be. They wouldn't really have any reason to have SOS code, blaring through. However, this was only the first of 3 recordings, and so we've looked at 2 so far. The Second, which I find possibly the most eerie, was recorded on February 1961. And it was the recording of a suffocation of a cosmonaut. So essentially what they were able to record was sounded like very labored breathing, as well as an increase in the heart rate, like boom, 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 boom. And someone that's really sounded their labored breathing. And when they showed this to a heart doctor, the heart doctor essentially said this is the sounds of someone dying. And I think that's probably, I wish we had that recording. Obviously, it's very, very dark, but I think that's probably one of the more interesting things in this case is that, and like I said previously, the SOS message is, I think there's something different than not hearing a human voice, but knowing that there's a human on that craft.
Yes, who's not speaking.
It's dark. It's like, it's weird. It's something that, and saying this before too, obviously these people, and pretty much all of them, were not getting any response back from Earth. So it is one of the more creepy things to imagine that a human, you know, basically looking at planet Earth while they're slowly drifting away, slowly dying, you know, begging, crying, pleading for somebody to contact them, and, you know, no contacts coming their way. I mean, that has to be the most alone feeling of all alone feelings.
Absolutely. I mean, kind of seeing your planet slowly drifting away. I mean, that's absolutely terrifying. I think any of us can find really thinking about that, how fearful it is, utterly alone. Especially, you know, even back in the 60s when space is still a mystery, but back then it was even more of,
it was an unknown.
like, you're one of the first people up there.
And let's not be ignorant of the situation, too, is that, and this goes for the U.S. as well, is neither of the two great superpowers fighting the Cold War really cared about people's lives, like, especially of their citizens. You know, I mean, there was constant circumstances where they were looking for any way to kind of get ahead, to, you know, be the guy that's, you know, whatever it might be the one that's ahead in the Cold War, communism versus capitalism, whatever it might be. And so I'm sure there's cases of the U.S. doing similar stuff, but often it's really hard for the U.S. to hide a lot of these different things. Via the CIA might be easier, but something very public like this with NASA would be difficult. But it's just not unimaginable for either of these nations to be taking chances like this, because for them it was like a life or death. It was, you know, and like we said, the space race was arguably one of the most important aspects of the Cold War, because they were basically fighting without fighting. It was a proxy war just like any other proxy war, but it proved in a way like which nation was like the most scientifically advanced, the most accomplished. And as I stated to you previously, I think the craziest part about it is Russia was absolutely winning. Before the U.S. got to the moon, there was no question the Soviet Union was winning the space race. And I think looking into that from that perspective, maybe the reason that they were able to get so ahead is because they were just making these quick shortcuts like this. They were, as you were saying, they were taking chances, you know, throwing people out for the wolves. And, you know, similar way to Elon's been developing his rocket ships over the past couple of years by, you know, a lot of them failing, is you learn a lot from failure, and you learn a lot scientifically from, you know, what went wrong and how to develop that better. And evidently, it, you know, led to them being really successful.
Yeah. And I think when you live in a place where you can the government can force people to do things and the ethics aren't a question. Yeah. Like what we said before, you're going to be sending out people. What I just thought about was that the fact that most likely those ships are still, I mean, they probably split apart, but after the person died, you know, that ship was probably, that body's like still out there in some shape or form, you know?
That is really dark.
I mean, the void of space probably, you know, I don't know, did whatever to it.
Well,
but
realistically, depending on what trajectory they went on, I mean, they've just been floating.
Yeah, it could just still be out.
Well, because
could you imagine if one of those rovers that we have out there
bumps into
space, just takes a picture of it?
Yeah, or like, could you imagine? I mean, yeah, dude. Or imagine Elon, like whatever group's going to Mars 5-10 years in the future, as they're flying by, there's an indication that they're passing. Or what if the cosmonaut what if it crashed into Mars or something crazy like that?
That'd be crazy.
And they find
that'd be crazy.
a Russian, like a Soviet Union era capsule just haziness around this theory. A lot of people that doubt it, whatever it might be. So just to give a little bit of cushioning, for one, we already talked about Vladimir Komarov, who was the one that burned up on reentry, and how hard Russia did try to prevent that knowledge from getting out, and how that was 6 years after our apparent recordings happening now, and they easily lost an astronaut on reentry. However, the Judica brothers also were brought in by NASA. NASA was actually really interested in the claims they were making and really wanted to better understand how they were utilizing radio technology, probably to intercept, Soviet radio signals, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Now, after deep evaluation of their recordings, as well as going through their different technologies to kind of ascertain if these were, realistically feasible, NASA decided that the brothers' recordings were legit. And in fact, that they wanted to take the Russian frequencies that the brothers were able to obtain, and then they provided them with NASA's own frequencies so that they could record, in their pastime. Because remember, these guys, these aren't, high-level FBI agents or people that were trying to do espionage. These are literally just some nerds in their basement that really liked radio technology and really just wanted to record stuff.
So NASA's like, all right, give us this, and we'll give you 2 more frequencies to go have fun with.
Exactly. And they ended up recording the moon, or I guess intercepting the radio transmissions of the moon landing and be able to transmit them completely on their own without NASA or TV or anything like that. They basically just listened into everything that was happening on the moon. So, I mean, if there was aliens or something like that, these guys know about it. These guys know about everything.
Yeah. I'm guessing they're no longer with us.
Yeah, no, they passed away. Actually, I don't know when they actually passed away. But they're definitely dead.
Yeah.
Regardless, though.
So I was going to say, like, during this, that, like, I don't want to, because it's like, USA, America's not perfect by any means. I was going to, ask the question, are we oblivious to not assume that America was doing the same thing? Because, like, we're living in America, and it's easy to kind of be like, oh, we wouldn't do that. Our government wouldn't do that. But clearly it's possible. But it casts a little bit of doubt on that because seen the NASA like to cooperate with these kids and even giving them their own, transmission signals.
Yeah. Well, no, I'd also say too, and you would definitely have a better background on this than I would, but from my understanding, it's like where you actually launch rockets is very particular. I know, in the U.S., like a majority of launches happen in Florida, or I forget where else, but it's because the way the trajectory can come out from those areas, it's like the easiest way for exiting Earth's atmosphere. And a number of those sites are actually in Russia. And in this period, it would be much easier for the Russian government to, I guess, do quote unquote dark launches that people like wouldn't have no idea was happening, because they're in very remote locations. Fort Canal in Florida is, it's like right by everybody. Everyone knows it's there.
Yeah.
And I feel like in the U.S.
Wasn't Texas was also a big one, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, realistically, the only place you could maybe get away with it would be like somewhere like New Mexico or remote parts of Nevada. And I guess it's possible, but it's probably much more difficult because these aren't direct locations for ideally where you would launch rockets, versus Russia's, where like locations still used today. But I don't but then again, it doesn't necessarily totally disclaim the fact that the U.S. could have partaked in this, and you know what I mean? I mean, I feel like it probably would have been found out. I feel like it's something that's extremely difficult to cover up via the way the U.S. system currently works. Why I think the Soviets had a little bit easier time because, like what I was saying is that, like, another proof of concept, you know, we went over Vladimir, which is, they tried hard to cover that up, but it was really hard when, you know, he had the open casket funeral and everything like that. We actually talked about this too, or actually we haven't talked about this, and this was directly released from the Kremlin, but a number of astronauts were actually airbrushed out. This was released by the current regime, but in the Soviet Union, a number of astronauts were airbrushed out, and there was a number of, you know, excuses why, like they died in training or whatever it might be. So again, that's like a little bit shaky. And then I think the biggest example to look at would be Chernobyl. So Chernobyl was a cataclysmic event. Lots of people died. Obviously, there was astounding effects for what was to happen in the world. And honestly, the world was minutes away from kind of being ruined from, you know, nuclear fallout because it was about to be a massive explosion. Blah, 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 blah. The only reason the world even found out about that was because nuclear reactors in Sweden and other parts of Nordic countries noticed a massive rise in their own nuclear radiation, and were able to figure out that the only way this could be happening would be from the wind, and it was blowing from the Ukraine. And so the world basically called out the Soviet Union. It's like, what the hell is going on over there? And then until Reagan came out and really put it directly to them that, like, you know, we know something's really going on, the Russians were trying their hardest to hide the fact of how severe Chernobyl truly was.
Yeah.
Evidently, they did come out and did say how bad it was, but it took until the new administration come in for all the details to be released. Now, again, Chernobyl, that's a massive, massive fuck up. Like, that's like world-ending fuck up.
For sure.
And, you know, a few cosmonauts dying, not that big of a fuck up. I mean, not good. Not that big of a fuck up.
Yeah.
So is it out of the question that, you know, if they're willing to cover up something so cataclysmic, why wouldn't they just, you know, simply cover up a cosmonaut dying and, or, you know, say whatever? Because it's not like anyone's really going to question them. And if these brothers never had this recording, no one would really ever know.
That's true. I mean, at this point, I kind of fully believe it. It seems like there's more evidence pointing to it than there's evidence pointing to it not being real. It just fits. It totally fits. Why wouldn't they be sending people in? Because to them, it's just like another body. They don't really care.
Another body, and it's also the most, like I said, the space race, it really can't be undervalued how critical that was, you know, to the Cold War. It was, it's something we still think about today. It's like, if you were to say what was the U.S.'s best accomplishments, it'd probably be winning the Revolutionary War. You know, I guess becoming like the economic superpower after World War II, the moon landing, and
maybe beating the Soviets in hockey.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, but like, there's very few accomplishments that you can put under the totem pole, or above the totem pole on the moon with the moon landing.
No, absolutely. I feel like that's one of those things we've been hearing about it since we were kids, you know, how big of an accomplishment that was to watch it on TV. I feel like it's something I can't really fathom. I mean, Russia seems like more of a threat nowadays, but I mean, for most of our lives, it didn't seem like, I don't know, the Cold War just seemed like, I feel like you had to be there to understand, you know, the fear and the competition.
Yeah, like any minute it could all go.
Yeah. So, I mean, if they were really trying to, you know, go against America, makes total sense.
Well, so what's interesting about this is, if we're going to bring it to a modern day sense, is I think comparison of the current Cold War that's happening with China. Now, although this Cold War, quote unquote, is definitely more economic than direct militarily, the implications are all the same. It's like how much is actually happening behind the scenes that we just have no idea about. That's like really having, some detrimental effects, or like people are losing their lives in ways that we just have no idea,
In China.
Or in the U.S. as well. I don't think it's outrageous to look at, what circumstances could be happening that the U.S. is losing people, or like situations like this where are we willing to hide major fuck ups because we can't look weak to China? You know what I mean?
That's true. Because like where we kind of, maybe the government rules, for the greater good, maybe more lives would be lost if we look weak or something like that. I'm trying to think in what way could lives have been lost. It
doesn't even really need to be lives or loss. It's just like the global idea of power politics, where if you take like a neo-realist perspective to international politics, like you never want to let the other guy get any more power than you have, because that can change the whole dynamic of the world. Like China's catching up quick. Now, granted, China has its own issues. China has its own things that are really, going to hurt it in the next 5-10 years, whatever it might be. But if the U.S. falls short, like looks weak in a lot of circumstances, like how many more countries start siding with China? How many more countries start valuing is it the yen? It's the yen, right?
I think it's the yen, or I think I remember an HQ question years ago where it's not the yen.
Is it the dong?
No, it's the yen, or it's the yuan. Okay, probably the yen.
So
renminbi.
Let's just go
I don't
yen,
know.
Whatever.
Okay, yeah.
But you don't want countries valuing the yen, in a similar way that they value the dollar. That's an issue that's happening right now with countries like Saudi Arabia, Russia, China coming together, where they're talking about trading their own capital instead of using the U.S. dollar, which is part of the reason the U.S. has been so economically powerful over the, past decades, whatever.
Yeah.
But, everything, regardless of what it is, it's like if you let them get that little niche power, it's like how much does that end up hurting you in the long run? How much does that, prevent our political desires from being able to come to fruition? And it's like, as a government, for us, for the normal citizen, it's like, man, that doesn't matter too much. Like, you lose a little ground here, you lose a little ground there. For a government, though, for people in power, like, that means everything. Losing that power, losing that opportunity. And I guess going to that, it's like, this is going to be very QAnon. But I think you've probably seen the pictures of, like, Joe Biden that people posted on Twitter that, like, went viral, where it's, like, him doing, like, it's, like, different interviews within, like, a very short time frame. And one, it looks like it's, like, a computer-generated AI. And one, it looks like actual Joe Biden. Well, he just, like, it looks, like, very touched up. Now, granted, this could all be lighting, whatever it is. But I don't think it's outrageous, especially with technology, where it is today with our governments, whatever, and like their capabilities. It's not outrageous to think that they would like doctor, edit, or even like generate footage to make Biden look like more presidential than he would like actually look.
I don't know, I think that they might not do it with, or I could be wrong. The U.S., the government technology they've always said the government technology is 10 years above what we have available to us commercially. I absolutely believe if you saw he did like a press conference earlier this week, where he was like, you can't be pro-insurrection and pro-cop, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, yeah.
I was like and his eyes were like, he's like, you cannot be pro-insurrection. His eyes were like extremely wide.
Looked like he was off a shit ton.
I mean, I fully believe that they're giving him Botox.
Oh yeah, and probably like meth and everything too.
Oh yeah, I think he's on like an Adderall cocktail. Yeah. Absolutely, and I think he's just being. I've always said I think he's being like completely controlled. Like he is not the one writing these speeches. For
sure, or controlling social media.
He is being given a cocktail drug, being like, hey, say this. He's like, oh, all right, folks. I fully believe that man has absolutely no clue what's going on.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's crazy. It's like, and again, like it's this weird thing as a country. It's like for some reason we just always forget. Like a lot of the people that are on the QAnon side or like hardcore on the right, like love to throw blame at Congress and like local politicians and this and that. And the left does the same type of thing where it's like they're going to blame the Republican, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
People just totally forget how fucking crazy and how deep into shit the CIA and FBI get and how involved they are.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And how directly. And what I'm saying is like this is the CIA's bread and butter. Is like we need to make sure America stays on top. We need to make sure no other nation, gets a win. They probably walk in every day and are like, what's the plan, Mr. Biden, President Biden, whatever, blah, 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 blah. They go through it and they're like, okay, we're going to create a rendition of this. Okay, we'll like set this up, like we'll set up lighting, we'll set up makeup, like whatever it is, like crazy stuff.
Yeah.
That we don't even know. And, they're doing it in the name of like not being able to lose. That's what I mean is like, so what risk are they taking? What stuff are we not, what stuff I guess are we blind to? Like in this situation where everyone in the Soviet Union didn't know they were losing cosmonauts. The only thing they'd hear is about the victories of Sputnik and Yuri Gagarin and whoever else, the wins, but they never heard about the losses. So it's like, how many losses are we not seeing right now because either they're covered up because they're doing everything in their possible power to avoid it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because anything can make us look weak. And it kind of makes you think, in the media, it seems like, there's new issues every week, but it's like the CIA and the FBI, I guess what you're pointing at is like they know the real threat, and, that might be China, and they know like the real thing we're combating in their eyes, I kind of want to say this because we were talking about, losses, and in this American administration, it might not be, actual human lives that are being lost. But you said, we're kind of battling China in terms of more economic growth. I think that the losses we're having is maybe working conditions.
I see.
Because China has literally, it seems like they don't have many regulations on working conditions. People are working in sweatshops producing mass-produced goods for nothing. And that's how they're getting. That's a huge, or maybe not. It seems like that's a huge way of them making money. Like, think about, even in my family alone, it seems like we get Amazon packages like every other day, and almost all of the shit, it's just random shit. Like, maybe iPhone chargers, face masks back then, a bunch of random shit, just random goods, and they're all from China.
For sure.
Like, literally, they are all from China just because it's so cheap and it's like fine quality. I feel like if we think as Americans that we are going up against China, we kind of are going to sacrifice our own selves, because like, it's not like America would have let a law pass that maybe reduces working hours for the average American down to 30 hours a week.
Yeah, I saw discussions
or
of
makes it a 4-day work.
It's like it.
What?
I think it was Microsoft that did the study, but it might be another Silicon group. But essentially, that like a 32-hour work week, 4 days a week, was highly more efficient and a better use of workers' time, and also like showcase like better results just overall. And
so with a 32-hour work week, would that be a 4-day work week?
4-day work week, 8 hours a day. So just typical like 3-day weekend instead.
Yeah.
And they were, because you look at a majority of jobs, you could do that 40-hour job in 32 hours pretty easily. And they were showing all types of efficiencies, whatever, but it just hasn't caught hold. It hasn't really, there's just been no relevance to it. And it obviously, you think more companies would want to employ it, but it's just not a thing. My only
And-
way to disagree with that, though, or add on, is that I also think it takes away our social freedoms. But continue with what you're going to say, then we can circle back to that. But
we're going to circle back to you, the social freedoms.
I just want to hear what you had to say.
Okay. All right. Just remember that. So, yeah, what I was saying, yeah, basically the 4-day work week thing, I've also seen a lot of things where people are like, because it makes sense. I mean, if you've ever seen anyone working, they're not getting on at 9 a.m. and working 8 hours straight. It's just not happening. I mean, me personally, I'm not in an office job right now, but I've worked in the past summers. I've worked 5 days a week, like 40 hours a week, 5 days a week. And right now I'm working pretty much four days a week. Probably close to 32 hours, honestly. And that one day does make a difference.
Absolutely.
It really like, I remember after working 5 days, I would feel so exhausted. I don't know. It just feels like one day it just feels like so much more. 4 days, it really seems like the weekend is always around the corner.
My reasoning too, I'd add to that, is like Saturday is always shot. No one does shit Saturdays. Like you do fun stuff, but you don't actually like do something like productive Saturdays.
Yes.
So the only productive day you're going to have for like laundry, like, I don't know, whatever crap you need to do, like that's Sundays. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then a lot of times that's ruined because, you're like, damn, I got 5 days of work ahead of me.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like,
and that sucks. Like,
but then if you do,
and it's like, do I want to organize my room and then be tired?
Exactly. Yeah.
Or like do all this like work and then be tired after today. And I can't even imagine what it's like being like a parent,
Oh yeah. Or having to work multiple jobs or,
like on the weekends, you can't even really enjoy yourself because you have to go to your kids' games.
Yeah.
Or maybe that probably is enjoyable for them, but I mean, that it just sounds exhausting in general.
Some people work 60, 70 hours a week too. And maybe, some of those jobs are necessary, but like ones that really aren't or whatever it might be, it's like, damn, like you're just kind of getting fucked. You know?
I was, so I feel like there's got to be an internal problem, and it might be because we are in this world superpower going up against China, because in like places like Europe, like they have a lot more workers' rights than we do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I know. I think I was reading like Germany has something where it's like you like legally a worker cannot work above a certain amount of hours. In America, I don't think that's a thing. But it's like the government steps in and it's like, hey, whoa, like what are you doing working 6 like that? That's like that is not allowed.
Yeah,
like that is not cool. Which the U.S. government would never do, because I think we are in direct competition.
See, by now, my only issue with this is that I think we still do a lot of different outsourcing to nations that aren't China. So, like Mexico, for example, Africa, the Asian countries that aren't China, like South Asian countries. So, I almost think I think the biggest thing is, and we talked about this numerous times on the podcast, but I think it's the loss of personal freedoms. I think there's like this direct focus of like, what are we willing to give up to beat China? But that's the thing is like, we talked about the Patriot Act. I don't know which episode, but one of the episodes talked about the Patriot Act and how like, because of 9/11, we're like, fuck yeah, like we need to get rid of that, whatever. What things could they be doing right now? Because I think taking away our social freedoms and like kind of making us in line, and like I think the work week is a part of that. I think, what we're willing to let pass, what we're willing to let happen to us, essentially. It's like, what are they doing to have that go through? Like, so many people look at like Russian bots, but it's like, how do we know that the CIA isn't like running bots to try get the American public to really hate each other, so then like they just totally ignore like what politicians are putting through, you know what I mean? Or like there's so much more focus, like what if a bill comes out, like let's say DeSantis is don't say gay bill gets to the floor, all right, and they're voting on it and they know it's going to be so controversial, or I don't know, the Build Back Better plan, like plans that are very notorious and everyone knows about. No one really reads the plans. Like, let's be honest. No one actually goes through the 1,000 pages in that document and reads every single one of them.
Us or politicians?
Dude, both. No, both.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So, like, who's going to stop CIA, regular people or whatever it might be from throwing in something in there that they, like, need for, like, whatever it could be, like, the fact that they can, I don't know, like, let's say something outrageous, but go into every webcam anytime they want. Control people's cars, like crap like that. They just can put that
and
in.
Maybe they phrase it in a way that's very like you wouldn't really know unless you really looked and been like, oh wait, that lets them do this.
Exactly. And but also it's not going to get talked about if it's in there, because anyone's going to talk about is the progressive woke shit, or like the hardcore right wing shit, like the critical race theory, like whatever side you sit on that. Like, that's what people are going to be so busy talking about that they're not going to even realize that they're, getting totally fucked over in this way or another way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Like, so they kind of focus on the hot button social issues.
Yeah. I mean, you've heard like so much about how like the January 6th thing, the conspiracy behind that, where there's like literally a guy who had like CIA connections who was standing in there like at the protest. He's like, we need to go inside. And they're like, no, we don't need to go inside. He's like, no, we need to go in. And he like kept saying this.
Like pushing it.
Yeah. And then like, he got arrested and then immediately released and like didn't get charged with anything or crap like that. I can see if I can find that video, but
well, did you ever see when the Black Lives Matter riots were out, the police, I think, it would place a shit ton of pallets of bricks near where the protests would occur because they want a reason. Because, I mean, if you're in a protest and you see a bunch of bricks,
you're going to throw shit.
It kind of gives people a weapon to use because they want a way to be like, oh shit, now we can arrest them.
No, it's like it adds chaos. Like,
yeah.
If we're all just standing. I mean, this is outrageous. I actually can't even. It's like I can't even find this. Let me go to DuckDuckGo. I bet it pops up. It's also too. It's like if people are just around like saying like whatever, like protesting whatever. It's exciting and it's a big thing. Mm-hmm. If people are throwing bricks at fucking buildings and shit like that, that's a new level. If you're on the right, like in 2020, if you're on the right, you're scared shitless, or you're like, holy shit, the country's falling apart. If you're on the left, you're like, the time for revolution is now. You know what I mean? Like that type of crap.
Yeah.
And it's like, it builds. It's like, it almost like implodes. Like I remember during the George Floyd riots, there was one, I forget in which city it was, where like stuff was getting set on fire, and it ended up, it was like a guy that wasn't protesting. He was like dressed in like full head to toe garb and stuff like that. But it was like, it almost directly looked like a CIA agent or something.
That was Minnesota, right?
I think so.
Where like Milwaukee or I forget where the initial protest was held.
I think so, Milwaukee, yeah. Trying to find this Jan 6 video because you got to see this. It's really weird.
Oh, Minneapolis.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it was Minneapolis.
Let's see if I can find this video really quick. Is this it? This might be it. Yeah, here we go. Like this is what I'm saying. It's like, and this guy, like I said, there's like connections and shit like this. Oh, what?
Yeah, share screen again.
Yeah, I gotta do the audio. Ready? All right.
Yep. Yo, can you turn it down a bit? Can you turn it down a bit?
I got you. It is loud.
Just a little loud. All right, yeah, that's perfect.
Oh, come on. That's not loading. Yeah, what if it's just cutting off right now? They're like, no. I know that.
They don't want to show them the truth, huh?
Maybe, man. Could be.
All right, well, while it loads. So this guy was arrested and then immediately taken out of custody.
Yeah, it was like a weird situation where wasn't arrested. Like, just didn't get in trouble for it, basically. Let's see. Let's try this. Oh, there we go.
Perfect.
How weird is that?
Oh. Geez, he's there every step of the way.
Yeah, wait, watch, too. Start saying we need to go in. This is crazy footage, too, to see.
Yeah. Okay, so people who couldn't see that on the stream, pretty self-explanatory, but basically that was an old man, not probably in his 60s or something like that, telling people in the crowd the night before, we need to go into the Capitol tomorrow. Then he's there the same day. It seems like he's everywhere, directing people directly to the Capitol, pointing at it, being like, we need to go in there, we need to go in there, spread the word. Then the last footage is breaking down the barriers finally to get into the Capitol. It's crazy. Some people were actually it looks like they kind of knew what this was, chanting Fed.
Yeah, I guess the guy's name is Ray Epps. And
Ray Epps.
They basically are just like, oh, he's definitely not. The FBI came out and was like, oh, he isn't one of us, like, whatever. Like, obviously they're going to say that.
I mean, yeah, of course they're going to say that.
Like, come on. Like, no shit, they're going to say that. I mean, even regardless, it's just like, it just shows, even if this guy isn't anything to do with FBI, it just shows how, like, putting in one person can really just, like, change the situation. Like you said with the bricks, this guy going in, like, keep saying to everybody, like, we need to go in, and everyone's like, no, we probably shouldn't go in. He's like, no, we need to go in, and like just walking around like that.
Yeah.
Whether you get the whole crowd or you get a few people going, that adds few more people, whatever, and it compounds, it snowballs, and then suddenly you have January 6th. You know what I mean?
And I think a lot of you see this a lot where it says that the government, a lot of their thing is they don't want the citizens to develop like a class consciousness type thing. They would rather, the lower middle class, they want them to be fighting against each other.
For sure.
And this helps. I mean, January 6th, that's pretty much maybe not 50-50 split. I mean, a ton of Republicans I know are, even if they're pro-Trump or against that, a ton of people, but still it's a very like, wow, look what the Republicans did again, or wow, look what the Democrats did again. And it's just us fighting each other on social issues when, maybe a big part is kind of waking up and realizing that the leaders are scared of us coming together and maybe talking about real issues that actually would impact us, like we were talking about again, workers' rights. I mean, or even more, because like, man, I feel like a lot of the problems stem from, you know, people have shitty jobs, the economy is shitty, workers aren't treated right.
They're just unhappy.
Yeah, a lot of people are unhappy, and they take out this hate on
Now,
other people who are also in the same exact position as them, when it should be
fully agreed.
demanding lawmakers to change things that actually would benefit both. But I think the media is really intent
Now,
on making us hate each other.
let me ask you,
so we can't get anything done.
What are you willing to give up for us to, like, for it not to fall apart? Like, what you're saying is, like, totally ideal. All right. But what if certain things can't be given up for us to not, like, lose this quote unquote Cold War to China? Or should we just be okay with losing it? Because it's like, remember, we've talked about this in other videos too. It's like, which one specifically? Where we basically were saying, like, South Africa, where it's like they could give control to the government to take care of the problem, and it's like, what comes next? Like, what's after that? And it's like, if we do a lot of things, we cut down on our military budget, you know what I mean? Like, we restrict powers of the CIA, you know, we make politicians more progressive and also open to, like, what the people are saying, which you can't argue, like, are all would be very good things. But then it's like, if we lose our position of power in the world, quote unquote, and, you know, like, the average American life could be good for however long that might be, but then China really takes a foothold and basically becomes the dominant hegemonic power in the world. What does that world look like? And it's like,
it's tough,
you know. Do they
part of me, did I cut you off?
No, go ahead.
So part of me, the first part of that question, I started thinking, and part of me wanted to say, do you remember beginning of the pandemic, we realized, like, our country was not, like, equipped for it. Like, we couldn't, we didn't have enough masks, and we didn't have enough of a lot of things because everything is manufactured in China.
Yep, meds too.
And there was a sudden, like, you know, China wasn't manufacturing as much anymore because they shut everything down. And then it showed, it was like, oh shit, like, we gotta
figure it out. This
is bad that we're so reliant on China. And at that point, I think we should have woken up and been like, hey, I don't know, part of me wants to be like, we should really be able to rely on ourselves, and we shouldn't have to compete with China. Like, it seems like, I don't know, it just seems like a race to, you know, what?
Yeah.
It's like, why are we so intent on competing against this country? But I think what everyone's scared about is just military power.
For sure.
You know, if we all of a sudden kind of shut ourselves off, and it's like, all right, let's focus on America. Let's focus on making our citizens the happiest. I think, which sounds great, honestly. I think what they're scared about is just China still being like, fuck that. We're still going to go on this globalist scale.
Exactly.
Putting our tentacle, not like a visual, like if they're like an octopus or something, kind of putting their tentacles into everything, like kind of like having like part of their economy is going into Germany, part of their economy
that's
is going
literally
into,
happening
like, you know
in
what I
Africa
mean?
right now. I mean, they're literally via the trains and road initiative, I believe, trains and road, where they're literally, and it's part of why Sri Lanka fell apart. They're literally throwing so much money at ridiculous interest rates for these African countries so they could build roads and this and that, knowing that these countries will have no viable way of paying it off. And then when they don't able to pay it off because it's outrageous interest rates, when they don't pay it off, there's things within the contract which gives like certain portions of their land or water entryways or certain control with the government or whatever it might be, or ports. Like, this is the biggest one. That's what happened in Sri Lanka, is China was able to take over one of their most economically profitable ports and basically turn it into a Chinese port. Sri Lanka lost a shit ton of money there, and it was because they're not able to do that the loans. It's happening all over in Africa right now. And so, like, from a you'll see tankies will like praise this. They'll be like, look how good like it is. Like, China's helping out a third world nation. It's like,
no way.
They're literally doing it so they can slowly take over that area economically, which is really, really smart. And it's like kind of a new, no one's ever really approached it that way before. But
Yeah.
that's what I mean. So
And
they start doing that to like Mexico, and then they're gonna, and then I don't know if the U.S. could become super isolate from everybody. I can't even think of that word right now.
Isolated.
Isolated, yeah. From everybody. It's like, and who knows how much funding's even. I mean, there's a lot of Chinese funding going into deep education right now, and politicians have worked with them for deals. Like, there's a ton of stuff. It's like, if we step off the gas, and they're still going full throttle, like you're saying, putting their hands every which way. Is that 10, 15 years down the line? Are we looking at a world that's like unrecognizable to what we have now?
And then next thing we know, if China starts to, put its hands into what, and then we're like, we can't do anything about it. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And people love to say it's like the U.S. This is a common trope that comes from the left, which is a fair trope. It makes sense, but it's, is that they like to look at, all the U.S. coups, all this, all that, like of how bad the U.S. is. And it has been.
Yeah.
But it's like, looking out for own power. It's like taking advantage of third world nations. It's terrible. It's something that we shouldn't do. And like, we should really self-evaluate and stop ourselves. But like, are we still better than, the alternative? Like China right now, you have a genocide happening with Uyghurs. You know what I mean? You have stuff like that happening.
Yeah.
It's like, if we're no longer that nation doing this stuff, like, not that we're on a moral high ground, but are we better than an alternative? You know what I mean? And it's like, if we let that alternative win, take over, do whatever it wants to do, are we just, you know what I mean? Like, what does that world look like? Like, what happens? Is it like an
I don't know.
authoritarian?
It's kind of scary.
Dystopian? Like,
part of me wishes that we could just, I don't know, that we can just like make sure that doesn't happen. Focus on our own. I don't know. It's scary.
It's wild.
I think it's because,
no one talks about it too. It's not like this is so in the back of America's. This is why I always talk when we have our political discussions. And I'm always like, we need to keep military spending, and I'm like, we really need to look at the international world stage, because this is what I'm saying. Everyone's so caught up on domestic politics when it's like, realistically, like, none of this shit matters. Like, none of this matters in terms of like, what's going to be happening that could actually affect us 10 years down the line. Like, it's important. A lot of stuff's important, but international policy and like what's actually happening in the world, like that, is by far the most important,
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know.
Totally
I feel like
agree
we
with
could
that.
keep thriving in that and like keep talking about it, but I think we've dove pretty deep, and I think that's also something that we should come back to later. Also, if we want to upload this on YouTube or TikTok, talking too bad about China might get us.
That's true. This one might be a cool experiment. See if the China clips get removed.
Yeah, we get them out.
They might.
Bad. All right, well, Tim, you got any last thoughts before we wrap up this welcome back episode from You Almost Dying?
Nothing much. I'm glad to be alive. Back here, I'm glad my voice wasn't permanently damaged by whatever the hell I got.
Like Kermit.
Yeah, I'm glad I don't sound like Kermit. I feel like most people wouldn't tune in. Yeah. Well, as always, good conversation. Hope we get back on soon.
I'm happy to have you back. Auditions are still open though, so if you're listening and are looking to come on the show,
yeah. If you want to replace me, America,
just give me mono again.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I guess that's all for this episode. I hope you guys did enjoy. Remember to check out our different social media links. Pretty much everything can be found either if you're on YouTube at our top link, TikTok can also be found in our profile. Or if you guys are just curious, anything, it's pretty much that this is not a podcast. So really hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
I seen a lot of shit, damn it, almost made me vomit. We sent a Eddie to the shoulder, he was already coming. Before he go in type of tweet, we'll be already dumping. He seen a red out on his body, I did dipping and running. See, I can spend a better day and make it back on the money. But I got problems in my life that go deeper than money. And all I ask for in exchange is for you to be honest.